Hello, welcome to Owls of the Okanagan and Smilkameen Part 1. This is Part 1 of our two-part webinar series on owls. My name is Lee McKinnon, and I'm going to spend about the next half an hour with you guys talking about owls. This webinar is brought to you by the Okanagan Smilkameen Stewardship Society. The Okanagan Smilkameen Stewardship Society is a small nonprofit organization that works directly with landowners and communities to try and restore, enhance, and conserve important wildlife habitats. One of our most important programs is our Wildlife Habitat Steward Program, and we work with really special and dedicated individuals who have set aside a portion of their property for wildlife. These landowners still often use their properties, so they can be vineyards or B&Bs or tree fruit orchards or all kinds of other properties, but some of the property is set aside for wildlife. If you're interested in learning more, please check out our website. So the topics we're going to cover in this webinar are more to do with owl biology. So where owls live, how they fly so silently, a little bit on their eyes, their ears, what they eat, and then owls in myth and culture. Part 2 of the series is going to be on IDing some of our local owls and a little bit on owl threats and what you can do to help owls. So if that sounds like that's more what you're into, then you might want to skip ahead to the second webinar. So where to find owls? I have some good news and some bad news. And the good news is that owls can use almost every different type of habitat. There's 14 different species of owls that can occasionally be found in the Okanagan. Some of them are very common, some of them are quite rare. And having so many different kinds of owls here means that they can use basically all of the habitats we have. You're not likely to find an owl flying out over the middle of the lake, but there are certainly owls that are adapted to living in grasslands. There's owls that live in forests, both ponderosa forests and deciduous forests, and denser forests and more open forests. There's also a few species of owl that are quite comfortable around people. So owls like barred owls and great horned owls. And as you see in this slide, snowy owls, although they're quite rare in the Okanagan. These are owls that you would likely find in sort of suburban areas. And they will often hunt rodents that are found in those areas. Lots of owls like edge habitats. So they like to have trees to perch on and a little bit of cover, but they also like to have open areas to hunt. So if there's only one thing that you know about owls, it's probably that they're active at night. Night owl is a pretty common idiom. And owls as a group have evolved to be active at night and to be very efficient night hunters. But owls are a big group of birds, and they've been around for a long time. And so some of the owls have actually started to adapt to be more active during the day again. So when to find owls is a little bit dependent on which owl you're looking for. So owls like the barn owl on the left there are very true nocturnal owls. They'll be hidden away somewhere during the day and very active at night. Owls like the burrowing owl in the center are what's known as crepuscular. Crepuscular means most active at dawn and dusk. And owls like the northern hawk owl all the way on the right are mostly diurnal, mostly daytime hunters. So in addition to owls being active at different times of the day, within the Okanagan, as I previously mentioned, there's 14 species of owl, but they're not all here at the same time, and some of them are common and some of them aren't. So some owls are resident owls and they stay in the same spot year-round. And those would be owls like the barn owl here, although the barn owls are pretty rare. So some examples of that would be the great horned owl or the barred owl. And it's currently early January. Those species are starting to breed already. And so if you go out for a walk right now, you might hear either of them calling. The owl in the center, the burrowing owl, is a migratory species. They breed here in the summer, but they will spend their winters further south, as far south as California or Mexico. The northern hawk owl is also a migratory species, but they do sort of the opposite of the burrowing owl, where they breed further north, and then you can sometimes find them in the Okanagan during the winter. If you're interested more in what time of day to find owls and what time of year you might find different owls in the Okanagan, then please check out the second part of our owl webinar, and we'll talk more about a few of our species from the Okanagan. So one of the things that makes owls fantastic predators at night is their ability to fly completely silently. What you might not know about owls is lots of them are kind of a sit and wait predator. So lots of owls will find a perch and they will sit on the perch until they see food walking by, or they hear prey moving around, and then they'll ambush them. But there are other owls that will fly low over the ground looking for prey. But if the prey hears them coming, it will hide. So this silent flight really allows them to be excellent ambush predators. So I'm going to play this clip from the BBC that really, it really shows their silent flight.
Good girl. Moses. Mo.
And now, it's Kenza's turn.
Shh. Wow. Really cool. No, nothing at all. Absolutely quiet.
It's amazing.
But what have the microphones picked up? The decibel waveforms show the sound being generated by the birds in flight. Each spike is an individual wing beat. But with the barn owl, there's almost nothing. Even our array of super-sensitive microphones fail to pick up any sound of Kenza in flight.
And here's the owl doing exactly the same. Nothing. Nothing at all. I'll play it again.
There's not a sound.
Yes.
That is really impressive,
Yeah.
isn't it?
It shows that they really are silent flyers.
So how does a barn owl fly so silently? When air moves, it generates sound. The more movement, the greater the sound. The pigeon's large body and small wings mean it can't stay airborne without a lot of fast flapping. This creates turbulence in the feathers below. The peregrine has much larger wings, which it uses to build up speed and chase down its prey. The barn owl is far more graceful. Kenza's large wings and small body make it easier for her to generate lift. So just one gentle wing beat sees her gliding effortlessly through the air, creating little more than a whisper in the feathers below.
So in addition to the large wings and small body size, owls also have specializations on their feathers. So I'm not sure if you can really see it here. On the picture to the far left, there's one of the flight feathers on the leading edge of the wing, and you can see there's sort of a comb sticking out from there, from the front edge. And the comb helps to break up the air as it flows over the wing, which helps to reduce the turbulence and further dampen the sound. And on both the picture on the far left and on the middle, you can sort of see, it's a little hard to see in the pictures, but you can sort of see that they're fuzzy. So they've got almost like a velvety finish on the feathers, and that also helps to change the way the air flows over the wing to help to really dampen that sound. So if you compare that to the feather on the right-hand side, which is a chicken feather, you can see it's very smooth, the edge is very sharp, and it's quite shiny. And so that's what most bird feathers would look like close up, is more like the chicken feather without any of that fuzz on top. And that fuzz really helps to also dampen the noise of their flight. So one story you may have heard is that owls can turn their heads all the way around. And while that isn't true, owls can turn their heads 270 degrees. So they can turn their heads about 3/4 of the way around. And so the reason for this is actually their eyes. Owls, as I mentioned earlier, most owls are nocturnal. They're adapted to live and hunt at night. And they have really big eyes. In fact, their eyes are so big that a great horned owl, which is about 2 feet tall, has eyeballs the same size as an adult human. But I said eyeballs, and owls don't actually have eyeballs. They have eye tubes. So nocturnal mammals have evolved to have a reflective coating on the backs of their retinas, and it allows them to use the light that enters their eyes twice. It enters their eyes and then it bounces off the reflective coating on the backs of their eyes and comes back through all the sensory organs. Owls don't have this. And so what they've evolved instead is this kind of unique cylindrical barrel-shaped eye. And you can see in the picture on the left here, in the skull, you can see the kind of ring. So they've actually got a bone that is inside the eye. It's called a scleric ring. And because their eyes are tube-shaped rather than balls, they can't actually move their eyes in their heads or inside their sockets. So their eyes are fixed. They're always looking at the same point in front of them. And if they want to look at anything, they have to move their whole head. And because they're silent predators, or during the day they're trying to hide and they're quite vulnerable, they don't want to give their position away. So one of the ways that they evolved to have to make the least amount of noise possible was that they've evolved to be able to move their heads all the way around, well, 270 degrees independently of moving their body, so they can keep their bodies still and not make noise, while still moving their head around to follow threats or to look for prey. They also have double the number of vertebrae in their necks than we do. So humans have 7 vertebrae in their necks and owls have 14. And they need to have some additional structures in the nerves and the veins to make sure that they don't get pinched with all of that rotation. In addition to having really good vision, owls also have really good hearing. We're just going to start this slide by looking at these tufts on the tops of owls' heads. And so here we have, this is a long-eared owl and a short-eared owl. And this is a great horned owl. And this guy is one of the screech owls. And there's a number of different screech owl species that look very similar. So I can't tell you which one he is. So we've called these things horns or ears, but they don't actually have anything to do with hearing. There aren't any structures associated with them other than feathers, so they're just kind of tufts of feathers on the tops of their heads, and they're not actually associated with hearing at all. So their actual ears are on the sides of their heads, not up on the tops of their heads where these tufts are. So we're not actually sure why owls do have these tufts on the tops of their heads, but there's three sort of main theories of what they might be good for. And two of them seem a little contradictory, but if you think about it, both make sense in their context. So one theory is that owls are out a lot at night or dawn and dusk, and it's very valuable to be able to recognize other owls by their shape. And so the horns give them kind of a unique silhouette and help them stand out a little bit better. So it might help partners recognize each other or just help owls in general to see other owls from further away. The flip side of that is that the horns or ears might help to break up the silhouette of the owl to make them look less like an owl. So this would be mostly beneficial to owls when they're roosting during the day. They're hiding from predators, and these tufts would help them look more like a dead branch that's broken off at the tip and less like an owl. The third theory is that the horns or ears make them look a little more like a mammalian predator. So they have those really big forward-facing eyes, and it might be scarier for other mammals that might get to their nests. So those are the theories, and none of them have been proven. It could be something totally different, but we don't have a firm answer on that yet. One of the things you'll notice about all of these owls is that they have very flat faces. That's a common feature across the group. The Inuit have a story about the owls that there was a princess who was turned into a bird, and she had a beautiful long pointed beak and then flew into an igloo in panic and smushed her face, so just like a cartoon. But they do have those very flat faces like that. And their flat faces act a little bit like our external ears, or sort of like a satellite dish. So what they help to do is funnel the sound in towards their ears. And then if you take a look at this skull over here, this is a boreal owl skull. And what you'll notice is that there's a little hole here and another one down here. And the skull is asymmetrical. One ear is much higher than the other. And this helps them to be able to pinpoint how far away something is that's making sound. And if you like me, like to spend some time on the internet watching cute dog videos, you'll often see the dog with its head tilted, or cat videos, same thing. You make a weird noise, something's making a weird noise, and the dog or cat tilts its head. So this is sort of the same thing, but it's permanent for them, that their ears are offset, and that helps them judge the distance of where the sound is coming from. And this means that even if it's so dark that they can't see their prey, or if they're hunting under snow, they're able to pinpoint exactly where their prey is and pounce on it in the dark. So what do owls eat? If you think about what an owl eats, the first thing you'd probably come up with is mice. Owls eat rodents. They'll eat mice and rats. They'll eat squirrels, which are just a tree rodent. Some of the larger owls, like the great horned owl, will eat bigger prey, so things like skunks and rabbits. They'll eat small predators, so this is a weasel. Owls will prey on bats. Bats are pretty good at avoiding owls, but they're all out at the same time flying around. So in some areas, owls can be a significant predator for bats. And unfortunately, some of the big owls can also prey on cats and small dogs. So if you do have a cat, it's a really good idea to try and keep them inside at night. And if you have a small dog, try and keep it close to you because they will occasionally go for pets. Owls will also eat birds. So this is generally more the case for the diurnal owls, so things like the northern hawk owl. And that's just because most birds aren't active at night. They're hiding in trees, so the owls don't have as much access to them. Owls will also eat other owls. So the big owls will eat small owls. This is a saw-whet owl. And I did once go for a bird walk, an owl walk with a birder who was making owl calls. And we were imitating the saw-whet owl call. And a great horned owl came and landed up in a tree right above us looking for the saw-whet owls. Owls will eat amphibians and reptiles. In general, reptiles, again, like the birds, they tend not to be very active at night. So they tend to be a little safer from owls. Owls will eat fish and crayfish. There is actually not a local owl species, but an Asian owl that's called the fish owl. And the fish owl preys mainly on fish. You may have heard that owls can't get wet. I've heard that a couple of times from different people. And it's not actually true. Owls evolved outside, and outside is wet. Even in deserts, there's rain. So owls don't have the same amount of waterproofing as other birds do. Because of that velvet that's on the outsides of their feathers, that tends to get waterlogged, and if they get really wet, they have a hard time flying for a little while afterwards. But they can get wet, they dry off. They just really don't fly particularly well when they're soaked, and they might need a little bit of time to dry out. Last but not least, owls will also eat insects. Some of our small owl species, like the flammulated owl, eat exclusively insects. So one of the ways that we know about what owls eat is through pellets and pellet analysis. Owls tend to eat their prey whole if it's small enough, and if it's not small enough, they'll rip off strips or chunks and eat that. It all goes down into the gizzard, and then the bits that can't be digested, so bones and fur, sometimes feathers, all come out in a nice, neat pellet. Some other birds of prey and also some corvids also produce pellets. Owls tend to produce really nice pellets, and they tend to kind of package up one meal discreetly, which makes them really great for studying their diet because you're able to get all of the bones from one meal together. So this skull here was dissected out of a pellet. Experts can then look at the skull and determine what species it's from. Most owl dietary assessments have been done through pellet analysis, which means that soft-bodied insects, things like caterpillars, maggots, worms, they don't really show up very well in pellets. And so they've probably been underrepresented in studies of owl diets. The other really cool thing about pellets is that owl pellets from ancient prehistoric barn owls have been around for about 17 million years. And before there were barns for them to nest in, they nested in caves. And pellets from these ancient cave-dwelling barn owls have been used to try and get a better understanding of ancient ecosystems because they're really well preserved in the caves, the pellets. So that's pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to try and talk briefly about owls in myth and culture. If this isn't your jam, please feel free to skip ahead and head on to our second webinar. I've included it in here because I think it's pretty interesting, and also because globally it has an impact on owl conservation. It doesn't have a huge impact on conservation within the Okanagan and Similkameen. So we'll start off with instances where people have positive views about owls. And in Western society, owls are often associated with wisdom. And you can see that in, the wise old owl in Winnie the Pooh. The coin that you see on this slide is a Greek coin. And the little owl was sacred to the goddess Athena, who was the goddess of wisdom. So that tie-in with owls and wisdom goes back a long time. And again, owls in education, the Duolingo owl helping you guys learn a new language, if that's something you're interested in. Outside of Western culture, there's a few examples. I have a few examples of kind of positive attitudes towards owls. This standing stone is found near Perth in Australia. It's called Gogomat, and it's thought to be an owl guardian stone. So the owl guardian stone sort of guards the area, guards the people. And these owls down at the bottom are owls at an owl cafe in Japan. They've become quite popular recently. So it's sort of like the cat cafes that you get here, that you get to go into the cafe and there's these owls that are just sort of hanging out. I think they're attached to their perches, so they're a little less free range than the cats in the cat cafes. There are many, many examples of negative views about owls in culture. So I'm going to play the barn owl call for you guys again. You heard it earlier in the silent flight video. But this time, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to imagine that you're all by yourself and you're out in the wilderness somewhere. Maybe you're lost and you don't know how to get home. You don't have a flashlight or a cell phone. You might see a flash of white and then you hear this. So that's pretty creepy. I'd be freaked out. And I think that goes a long ways to explaining why there's so many kind of negative connotations around owls. The Latin name for the order that owls belong to is Strigidae, which comes from the Latin word striga, which is a witch or a spirit that screams at night. And often owls are associated with witchcraft or seen as familiars. There's a lot of instances where they're seen as not actually being birds at all, but they're shapeshifters. You can kind of see that some of that with Hedwig in the Harry Potter series, that association with owls and witches and wizards. Lots of popular culture has, if you think of scary movies, one of the things that comes up is these creatures with completely jet black eyes, and you see on the top line there, both the barn owl here, and this is a flammulated owl with those jet black eyes. It's pretty scary. Owls are widely viewed to be bad luck. Hearing an owl call or having an owl roost on your house is associated with death or disease. I brought this coin back onto this slide as well. The Roman goddess Minerva was in many ways the Roman equivalent of the goddess Athena. She also had a close tie with the little owl, so you might think that the Romans also had very positive views on owls, but there's very ancient texts going back to Pliny the Elder that talk about an owl making its way into Rome and this great big cleansing ceremony that had to be done after the owl came within the city walls to wash away all the bad luck. So that's the sort of viewpoint of a lot of cultures on owls, is that they're really bad news. If you're interested in learning more, the Global Owl Project did a really great video together with the Houston Owl Center, and it's about 2 hours long, and it talks about nothing but owl myth and culture. One of the really interesting stories was an interview that was done with a man in, I think, Iran. And he said that owls were really bad news. If they came, it meant that you would get sick or you would die. And if they stayed around for long enough, the house would get sick and die. And the main owls that they have there, the main owls that you would see, are little owls. And little owls, like barn owls, like to roost in old abandoned buildings. So this is actually a juvenile saw-whet owl in a barn, but yeah, so just kind of flipping things around. So instead of the building is abandoned and so owls will live there, owls live there so the building is abandoned and falling down. And then all the way over on the bottom right here, we have William Shakespeare. So he's just there to show that even in Western culture, fairly recently, our views on owls were not that great. Owls are mentioned a few times in Shakespeare's play, maybe most famously in Macbeth, where an owl cries, and that's how Lady Macbeth knows that King Duncan is dead. So one of the things that threatens owls globally is owl trafficking. Owls are eaten in certain parts of the world for meat. Owls or parts of owls are used for traditional medicine and also by witch doctors. They're used in different cultures for different reasons. These pictures were taken, or this series of pictures here was taken at a market in Indonesia. And it's thought that all of these owls were probably wild caught. So these aren't owls that are being bred in captivity to go be pets, although some of them might end up as pets. The picture in the middle is the Hindu goddess Lakshmi. She's associated with wealth. And in parts of India around Diwali, people will give each other owls as a way to just help ensure that they will get wealth in the next year. That's quite a threat to owls. And over on the right, we have an elephant tusk. And there's parts of Africa where owl eggs are more expensive gram per gram than elephant tusks. So obviously killing one elephant, you get a big tusk, it's very heavy, and owl eggs are pretty small and light. But there was a 2014 study that found owl eggs selling for $3,700 US in markets, and those were going to witch doctors. So that's where the owls in myth and culture kind of really comes into contact with conservation. In other places where people have really negative views of owls, there can be persecution as well. So that's it for Owls of the Okanagan Part 1. Please come back for Part 2. And thank you to all of our funders who made this possible.